amount of transferability between different professions is really high, and specifically for lawyers, that the kind of things that we learn in law school is really a lot of transferable skills that help you do a lot of different things. 1 in 5 lawyers do end up leaving the profession, even if they've never immigrated anywhere, they've just stayed in one country. Well, 1 in 5 lawyers will probably leave. And that statistic, even though this one is from the Bar Association, I think that would hold true in any country.
I just want to make a quick comment here. Sorry, Nitya. I announced at the beginning that I would be recording the session, and then I forgot to hit record. So I have now hit record, and now for the rest of the session, it will be recorded. My apologies.
No worries, no worries. Okay. So I found that, when you come to Canada, there are 2 types of immigrants. There's one type of immigrant who comes here with a plan, who's got a clear career path in mind. And case in point would actually be my husband. He came here, he did his master's at the University of Waterloo, and he knew that he was eventually looking for a job here and he wanted to settle here. He had a clear career path. And the benefits of immigrating in that format is that, well, you've got your entire career services at the university looking out for you. You've got university professors who are probably going to give you recommendations. And you've got a system that helps you start the process. For me, on the other hand, Canada wasn't in my plan at all at any point. And when I got married, obviously, we didn't want to have a long distance relationship, right? So I ended up moving here and applying for PR. But then now what do? I'm here physically in Canada, but I have no qualifications. My law degree does not transfer directly. I don't even know what I need to do to transfer my law degree. And I have no job. For the first time in my life, I have no job. So that is such a challenge, especially if you're a type A person. You're not used to that. And you're seeing a lot of your peers go ahead in their careers. But that kind of fear that you have, that you're like, okay, I don't know anybody here. I have no network. Do I need to go back to school? How much will that cost? How long will that take? Do I have to go back to law school, which means it's 5 years? I don't think I could do that. And hey, this whole time, I'm not going to be earning anything. I'm not going to have anything to write on my CV. And in the meantime, my friends back home are progressing in their careers. And this friend got promoted to being a senior associate. Oh my God, that friend is 3 years away from partnership. So you see those things and you really don't know what to do. And there's no clear path for you. And in my case, that's where CRIEC came in. That's where I think the Law Society of Alberta as well had a couple of events that were targeted at ITLs. And that helped me sort of set up, okay, these are the steps I need to do to get my articles and do the call to the bar. And so that's what a traditional career path looks like. You go to university, you do your articles, you get called to the bar, you start your practice, and then you go on from there. That's what we think when we think of a career. We don't think of all the messy career changing that we talked about earlier. But what happens when you immigrate? Well, you kind of have to change your career again. It's like you had one full career in India, and now you're going and doing the entire process again in the new country and in Canada. And so it's essentially you're building 2 careers from scratch, following this model, the traditional model: university articles, qualification, practice. And so that's pretty much my story. I graduated law school, spent 5 years studying, did my clerkship in the Indian Supreme Court. So we don't have a mandatory articling period in India, but I actually did do a clerkship because I wasn't ready to sit for the bar. And then I got called to the bar, practiced. And then I came to Canada, and then I did the whole process again. So I studied again. I spent a year studying this time. I know a lot of people who come from, if they don't come from a common law country, they're going to have to do 5 years of study, not 1 year like I did. Then I did my articles. I got called to the bar, and then I joined practice with Deloitte. So did I really need to do the entire process twice? If we stop to think and looking back on my own career path, some of the people I work with today, they don't necessarily have the bar qualification. So this chunk over here, the articles and the call to the bar, they skip that. They basically immigrate and they join Deloitte straight. They skipped everything in the middle because the work that I do right now doesn't require me to be a qualified lawyer. Sure, that helps, but I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not doing any of those things. So, if someone had stopped me and said, hey, can you think about what exactly you would like to do in your career? And there's this role with Deloitte that, you could do this, you could do all the things that you like doing, and you don't really need your articles in this diagram. Then that would have changed things for me. I would have skipped this entire 2-year process and jumped straight here. And maybe I would have done the bar after that. I could. It's possible to do your articles after having worked for a couple of years. So there's following the advice of, okay, let's just start from zero again, doesn't always apply. And more importantly, for a lot of people, this may not be possible. I had the luxury that I was able to spend 1 year doing nothing other than studying for my NCAs. And I was able to do my articles again. I found articles. When I first came to Canada, there were people who told me it takes about 5 or 6 years to get articles. And that's true for a lot of people. But, as luck would have it, I found articles within a year's time, but a lot of people don't. And so to put your life on hold till you go through this process is definitely hard. And it's a lot to ask of someone. And whether you help them brainstorm ways to jump here straight away, or whether you help them find a stopgap to work at while they do this process, all of those options need to be on the table. It can't always be just A, B, C, D. You need to be able to flex that model to suit the individual and what they want to do with their lives. And a lot of that, my approach to my career and what I think everybody should follow is really influenced by Barbara Sher. So I'm just going to cite her here. So, if anybody wants to look at those resources, I would strongly recommend that. But my takeaways from that is think about the goal. Think not just about the title that you want to have, or I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an accountant. Well, it's not just that. What work do you actually want to do? Do you see yourself actually working in, let's say, tax law specifically? And do you see yourself helping clients avoid tax problems? Or do you see yourself going before a court and arguing criminal law? There's a different skill set required for both of those jobs. And there's a different type of networking that you need to do to get both of those jobs. There's a different type of resume that you need to build to get those jobs, and so on, right? If you want to do an internship, or even if you want to do volunteer work, it's not just about finding the very first volunteer opportunity that comes your way. It's about finding volunteer work that gets you moving with the kind of people that will be in the area that you eventually see yourself working in. So one of the things I did, for example, is I went for a couple of Calgary Chamber of Commerce events, and they have a tax and economic committee. At least they did back then. I think they did a restructuring after I left. But I was able to mix with other lawyers and see what they were talking about. The Bar Association, the Canadian Bar Association, has student memberships that are $25 for a year, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a very, very cheap amount. And that basically means that you can go and attend some of their lunch events free of cost. And those lunch events happen once or twice a month. So suddenly you're sitting in the room listening to other lawyers talk about case law. You're sitting next to other lawyers who you could potentially talk to over lunch. And hey, I'm suddenly moving with the right people who could potentially get me a job. And you're not even just looking for a job. Your first role in that situation is, hey, I want to know more. I want to learn Canadian law. I don't just want to get a job. I also want to know what your work is like. I want to know what the work culture is like. I want to know what you think about where the industry is headed. I want to know where you think I would fit in the process. And, one example could be, let's say, you have a lot of experience in your home country interacting with government officials, for example, and you see yourself working in tax law or working in that kind of a government role. Well, Deloitte actually has an entire group that just does just that. So rather than us interacting with CRA on a day-to-day basis, let's say I need to call CRA and ask them to figure out registering a particular client. Well, I'll hand that over to that person. That person takes care of interacting with the CRA, and I continue doing other client work. So, if you're talking about, let's think about stopgap roles till you get qualified. Well, yeah, here you're doing exactly the type of work you want to be doing. You're moving with exactly the type of people you want to be moving. You're providing value from your existing background. You're using your skills, and there's value that's flowing both ways. Your skills are useful to the existing workforce as well. So
I'd just like to make a comment here, Nitya,
yeah.
that anybody who is adept at dealing with government officials, and if that's a high skill for you, I'm sure you are highly sought over in many areas, because
Exactly.
that is a distinct skill that I think a lot of us don't have. I think we can get a little impatient. So that's a skill we might not think about that's actually pretty relevant.
Yeah, or even raising funding. That's another very high demand skill that a lot of people could use. So it's a way of thinking about your career, not just as how can I follow the path that a person in Canada would follow, but to take a step and say, hey, I'm basically moving careers. How can I be like Vera Wang and use my existing network, use my existing skill set, and design a dress for a friend that eventually lets me design more dresses and become a designer full-time. You take little steps into the field and grow that way. And it's never, you don't necessarily have to go to university, and you don't necessarily have to get the call to the bar before you get your first job, which is maybe what I misunderstood when I first came here. So especially because I'm talking a lot about lawyers, I thought I'd just really quickly talk about the kind of skills that I use today that actually help me. And as background, what I do is indirect tax. I think pretty much any accounting firm would be structured similarly, where for indirect tax, within the vertical that is indirect tax, we have several sub verticals, and that would be there's a group that does compliance work. There's a group that does advisory work, which is what I do. And then there's a group that does recovery work. So when we say compliance, let's say what we would be doing is maybe filing all GST returns for a company for the year. And we would basically get their data, and we would sales data, and we'd prepare the returns based on that, double check that the information is accurate, and finalize the return for them. And so they would just sign off on the return, and it saves them a lot of time to have a third party just take care of the return for them. So obviously that's a skill that requires more compliance type work. So for the most part, you'll see a lot of accountants in that role. At the same time, the person who is preparing the return does need to know what needs to be put in which line. And for that, you do need to know the legislation as well. And when there's a slightly more complex question that comes up, let's say we don't know whether my client is a bank. I don't know if this particular fee that they received is taxable for GST or not. Well, that's where your advisory group comes in. So it stops being just the compliance team that's working on it, and the advisory team comes in. The advisory team tends to be more skilled on the legislation. And so we're able to actually tell you, well, there's this case law here that says this, and so it should probably be classified here. But I mean, ultimately, the client needs to get legal advice on whether or not what position they want to take. But from our perspective, this is where it goes. So recovery is where you look at what the client has done in the past and say, hey, you might have overpaid tax, and we'll come in and help you recover that overpaid tax. So all those things go into any accounting function, whether it's indirect tax, whether it's income tax, whether it's structured in exactly this way or not. All these skills go into the process. And so what that means for me in my day-to-day work is, well, I need to be able to understand what the client is doing. So a lot of the work I do, for example, tends to be carbon tax or excise tax or fuel tax. And the client is talking in the jargon of oil and gas, or in the jargon of whatever industry they're in, brick making or any other industry, banking. So you need to be able to understand what the client is telling you. And for that, you need to be able to grasp the technical information. You need to be able to research the legislation, to know what the legislation is saying, to know what case laws are there, if any. Maybe talk to the CRA about it, communicate, or more often we're even talking to the provincial revenue authorities. And well, I've heard a lot of people say lawyers are professional writers. So you need to be able to compress our conclusions into, a small email that the client can actually understand. And then also one of the big things that I found is too many people come in saying, I think this should be exempt. I no backing for that at all, but I think it should be exempt. Or, there's a merger and acquisition happening, and you're saying, oh, but we only do commercial activities, so I assume everything is exempt. Well, it's not that simple. Are we sure that everybody's registered for GST? Are we sure, you've got the right forms filed? And that's sort of where we come in. We can take a minute, not just follow what the client wants, but to follow the legislation as well, and find that via media that protects you from risk in the long run, and maybe simplify the system for you. But we're not giving legal advice, but we're helping make the compliance process much easier. And we're helping you basically avoid problems. And all of the legal skills, all of that ability to read the legislation, read the case law, without that, we wouldn't be able to do our jobs. And so,
Nitya, when I'm listening to you kind of go over these, and when I look at these, the items all listed here, in my brain, I'm running a little parallel here between these skills that are needed and what you're saying is actually something that can be done between the mentees and the mentors as well. I mean, when I look at these and then I look in our toolkit and list off some of the different requirements, you know, mentors are looking to accommodate with the mentees. These are almost directly parallel lists here. So it's interesting actually, because you're saying what a lawyer is doing for the clients, and a lot of these, you know, transferable skills and areas, it fits in for that as well. So I didn't notice that earlier, but I mean, it is, it's very, very similar. So it's interesting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess you need that critical eye no matter what you're doing, whether it's filing a tax return or applying for a job. You need that critical bent of mind to look at it. And this would be true not just for lawyers, but for anybody in any profession. They're coming in with certain skills, and it's about figuring out what those skills are and where they could deploy them. That matters. And you know, if you're great at research, hey, maybe you could become a law firm librarian, or even a regular librarian, not necessarily a law firm librarian. But this area of legal technology is something that's super interesting to me, and I think it's going to explode over the next couple of years. Is you have companies like Thomson Reuters who have search engines that are crawling for cases, and now what they even do is they actually tell you, you know, if this is your fact situation, we think 80% likely to that a court would decide this in a certain way. So for example, I don't know if my client is carrying on business in Canada, and carrying on business is a very complex legal question where you actually have hundreds and hundreds of case law right from the common law days that talk about what is carrying on business. But if you input the factors that into the search engine, it's going to tell you, well, there's an 80% likelihood that your client is carrying on business in Canada, and you should look at ABC cases. Well, somebody on the back end is helping the company develop that resource, right? And that somebody probably understands what the legislation and what the case law says, which means they probably have legal training of some kind, or they could use legal training. So I've seen so many lawyers go into journalism because they can, you know, talk very clearly and use the technical information skill that they've learned as lawyers to decode what the technology is for the general consumer. Policy research, again, it's a direct correlation. If you're great at writing, well, there are different types of writing that you could do, and it's about finding what fits with your personality and what fits with where you want to go, and starting to meet people in those specific subfields. And that would eventually lead to something else, which would lead to something else. You know, and the same thing, if you're detail oriented, well, I've seen so many lawyers leave their professions and go into human resources or coaching people. But if you've got that legal training, whether you got it in Canada, whether you got it in India, or wherever you got that from, you can still read employment contracts better than somebody who's got no legal training. But then you don't need to be a lawyer to be a human resources professional. And so maybe when you move countries, you also move careers, and you can find a fit for yourself that would be unexpected, but in the long run would make you happy. It's not just about finding a job. It's about finding what works for your life. And the more you think of all those permutations and combinations, the better the opportunity is. When I did search for my job, I know it really helped the person I was having coffee with. If I went in and said, hey, I'm interested in tax law, and that's what I'm looking for, as opposed to, I'm a lawyer, I don't know what I want to do, and I want the first job that comes my way. That's not exactly the best sell for yourself, right? But when you come in and you've thought all these steps through, and you have some kind of idea of who you are, that's the advantage, that no matter where you interview, those skills will shine through. Okay, so that's it from me. I do have some resources on here, and the Bar Association Career Alternatives for Lawyers has several examples of people who have changed careers, but it's not specific to law. The same approach can be used by anyone, but I just thought I'd include the ones that I looked at here.
And I think, Nithya, thank you very much for agreeing to do the session today. Just a little background for everybody attending. When Nithya and I kind of first started discussing and going over, ideas, and if Nithya would be interested, what really piqued my interest is that one of the first comments she made is, what if not all lawyers want to be trial lawyers? What other options are there available? How can we get to them? And I think, as I personally in my position review applicants that are applying to become mentors with CRIEC, what I see often is, I want to help mentees with some of the tips or skills that I have seen and I have learned through my experience that might make things a little bit easier for them moving forward. So I think anytime we can kind of get an alternative view of somebody who maybe has taken a different path and done something a little bit different, that can be helpful, because you never know what might pique the interest of somebody. As Nithya said, not everybody is available and able to maybe do the straightforward, take your 5 years, redo this. So I think by providing an idea of different avenues that are available, that can be very useful just to help anybody, not necessarily in the law field. This is a good kind of thought exercise and exercise to look at just overall as people are transitioning to Canada. Did anybody have any questions or comments? Michael, I see your hand up there. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Nithya, thank you for sharing this with us. One of the things I always work through with my mentees is the reinvention process. And we go through a 3-step process: the I am, I can, and I could. So the I am typically is what job you did in your mother country. So in your case, I am a lawyer, educated and in India, all right? What you've done with your exercise today is you've identified the I cans, that is things that are in short-term reach, but also the I coulds. How could you pivot into some of these other careers? So very useful feedback. Thank you.
No, I love that. I love that you've broken it down into sort of complete the sentence, because I always find that the easiest to get your brain thinking about options. So when you say I am, you automatically know what to fill it up with. And yeah, that's awesome.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to share with the group? Any comments, maybe similar experience, different experiences, anything along those lines? Okay. What I would like to do at this point, I'm just going to put up a little screen here just to let you know for the next CRIEC event that will be going on here. So please just let me pull this up. All right, so the next CRIEC event that will be put on is a community partners meeting. This will be done on Tuesday, June 2nd from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Anybody who would like to register, please email contact Jaya at criec.ca. So that'll be the next sort of video session that's going on for CRIEC here. Anybody who has any suggestions for future sessions, I always kind of like to get input from the CRIEC community to see what kind of information are people looking for, what's being brought up by mentees, what could be useful knowledge and experience to share. So if anybody has any suggestions, you can email me at jonathan@criec.ca. I'd love to hear from you. Any suggestions, as I mentioned, just for things that you hear from mentees that maybe they need some, extra information in, then we can find somebody like Nitya who's willing to help out and do something like this for us. And then we can share that with the larger CRIEC group. So there's some more information there. I see something's come up in the chat. Okay, there we go. Does anybody have any further comments, questions, anything they'd like to discuss? Michael, is that a new hand up or an old hand up?
Well, it's an old hand in my case, but it's actually a new hand. I have got one of my mentees willing to talk to the group here about the Hunter Hub at the University of Calgary and how siloed education is passé, and how the young men and women who are at the University of Calgary are looking across silos at building their careers. So she's willing to present to us as a group and share what the Hunter Hub delivers to the students of tomorrow.
Michael, let's get contact. Let's kind of email back and forth. We'll get something going. Anybody else, like I said, if you have any experiences with mentees, anything you think would be helpful to the larger group, please email me. Feel free to contact any of us. I see Rosa and Lana here as well. We really are trying to find things that would help you in your experience as mentors with the mentees. So please bring us your ideas. We're always looking. I would just I think we've got. Nitya, great timing. We did very, very well today. We're at about 12:52 here, so 8 minutes left open here. If anybody would like to speak with anybody in smaller groups as well, please let me know. I've booked the Zoom time till 1:30. So if there's anybody who would like to have individual discussions, maybe some of us feel more comfortable in a smaller group, just, you can give me a little note on the chat there, and I can kind of try to set people up that way. If anybody has anything else they'd like to share, please feel free. Oh, I know. It was a big night last night. Flames Oilers. Everybody's feeling a little shy, maybe a little bit tired here today. Sorry, when we booked this session, we did it about 2 months ago. We didn't have the playoff schedule yet. So I appreciate everybody that has come out and turned out after such a big night for the city and the province yesterday. So thank you all to the attendees as well for coming to participate today. It's always great to have new faces and other people attending here. And yeah, that's great. We do have a recording of this session. As usual, I made my one technical mistake, which was not hit record this time. So I think we're about 5 minutes into the session. We'll do some editing. We'll get that posted up. We'll put notes out on all our social media to let people know when that's up there as well. And Nitya has also offered to share the slides from today as well. So if anybody's interested in that, Nitya did a great job putting this together. I take no credit. I did the beginning introductions. All the rest of the slides are Nitya's. And I think she got us laughing at the beginning and got us thinking in the middle, and now we're discussing at the end. So for me, that's what we're trying to do with these. So thank you so much, Nitya. I really do appreciate everything you've done for this session today.
Thank you, John. And credit actually goes to Microsoft PowerPoint because they have some fantastic design ideas on the side. But yeah, I'll.
Awesome. And does anybody have anything else they'd like to go over today? Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time out to do this today, especially you, Nitya. You're an absolute pleasure to work with. Nice to see everybody again here today. I always like these sessions because I kind of get to like say hello to everybody I've been emailing for months. So nice to see everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks a lot for attending. We really appreciate it. Michael, did you have anything else? And Sonia, thank you for coming today. I hope you enjoyed it and you got some ideas and just in a kind of lay of the land for how we normally do these. Kathy, always a pleasure to see you. And please let me know if there's anything else you need. Terry, you're looking great today. I'll see you in a little while.
Jonathan, Jonathan, I just wanted to know, you and I are going to talk sometime today, right? Or is it today? Or are you going to set up a meeting?
No, we don't have it set up for day. I have a meeting after this meeting, but then I'll email you and we'll set something up for tomorrow if you're free.
That's fine. I thought we had talked about after this meeting, so I thought since most people are off, I could just ask you, but that's fine. Set it up. I am available tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow.
Okay.
I have a mentor session this afternoon, so it's all good.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nitya, thank you so much. That was really great. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that if any of those technical difficulties kind of came up, was it just like a connectivity?
No worries. My computer worked, so I'm glad for that. Otherwise, I'd have had to ask you to share the slides, but we got it working.
And no problem. I had it in backup so that I can do it. It's just sometimes I find
that's why I emailed it to you yesterday. I was like,
no. That's why I'm always like, can I have the slides? Can I have the slides? So that's great. No, thank you again. I really like the way you put that together. It was, like I said, what I liked is that there was that kind of fun aspect where everybody got talking at the beginning before we got into the sort of more kind of content related stuff. And I really enjoyed it. So thank you again for that. Anybody who talks